So I just finished editing this episode and I wanted to say a few things. I have learned a lot about Elon Musk while researching for this episode. It was important to me to get this information out there to open up the conversation around Elon Musk and his character. Everything I knew about the man up until this point was against my will. You know, everywhere you look, there he is the past few years, really the past decade. And so I knew I didn't like the man just based on his actions, based on him making the world a worse place with his billions of dollars. But it was really interesting diving into his childhood and his family dynamics. And it really helps explain the little boy inside of the big grown titty baby. I'm going to get into it in this episode, of course, all the details, all the tea. But I'm seeing a really strong pattern of narcissism in his life. Even the incident he claims, was bullying his father, also an unreliable narrator, tells a completely different story that basically Elon fucked around and found out, and his mouth has always gotten him in trouble. There's this very clear pattern of his ego leading the charge in every situation and then throwing a tantrum when he isn't believed. And he recently went on Fox News. This is part of why I decided to record this podcast now and get it out now. Because he's now crying about how mean everyone is being to him and to his baby Tesla. And people don't hate Tesla. They hate Elon Musk. Even the board has called on him to step down. And he refuses because he is a narcissist. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I just have a lot of personal experience with narcissists and narcissism. And it is a spectrum. Do your research on it. Narcissism is fascinating. But if there is a textbook definition, if you look it up in the dictionary, Trump and Elon will be right the fuck there. So every villain has his origin story, right? We're here today to talk about Elon's. And hopefully it helps make a little more sense of the reality we live in today, the person he is today. So please enjoy this episode of Make It Make Sense. Fighting evil by moonlight, winning love by day and night. Hello and welcome back to For Love and Justice. I'm your host, Elise Reichard, and today we are going to try to do the impossible and make sense of Elon Musk. We're going to unpack everything from his childhood to his quote-unquote successful entrepreneurial endeavors to what he's up to today, all the chaos that surrounds him. Because Elon Musk, yes, he's the richest man in the world. We've known that. That's been a thing for years now. But now, everywhere you look, there he is. Every time you open your phone, there he is. Every time you turn on the news, there he is. And his reputation has really changed over the past few months from some people thinking he is a kind of god or a tech titan or a trailblazer or a genius. Now people are getting to see his hysterical toddler antics on Twitter and on the real world stage, at the White House, sig heiling. Yeah, he's been busy lately. So how did he get here is basically what we're going to look at today. How did Elon Musk's upbringing shape the man who now wants to colonize Mars with all his billions of dollars instead of helping people? He is slashing programs that help the most vulnerable. So, for a wannabe Batman, a wannabe Tony Stark, just like them, he's so smart, he's dumb. Because helping the world and feeding your ego could actually be pretty simple if you were a good person. Now, I have personally been a hater of Elon Musk for several years now. I finally got my ass off Twitter when he bought it for $44 million. Um, yeah, I knew what was coming. And I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. As y'all know, I'm a writer, I have a journalism background, and there is plenty of information out there to find on this man. So I'm going to link my sources that I pulled from in the show notes. But a few sources that I pulled from, so interviews with Musk with Rolling Stone, with the CEO of Axel Springer, interviews with Bloomberg Business Week, Vanity Fair, Forbes World Billionaire List, as well as Ashley Vance's biography on Elon Musk called Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX, and the Quest for a Fantastic Future. Interviews on 60 Minutes and PBS. This man likes to talk. He loves to talk about himself, his career, and his early life. So we're going to get into it. So the early years, as we all know, Elon Musk is not American born. He was born in Pretoria, South Africa on June 28th, 1971. His father, Errol Musk, has been described as brilliant but emotionally domineering and abusive. Sounds familiar. His mother, Mae Musk, was a model and dietitian who was known for being super independent. She was a girl boss. She was a working lady. So it kind of sounds like both of his parents couldn't really be bothered. It's giving emotional neglect. And then he has two siblings. And he is the oldest sibling. Just throwing that out there. A lot of oldest siblings have control issues. Love to you all. None to Elon Musk. So his relationship with his dad, right? It was toxic. Basically, we know the story, right? A little boy wants his daddy's approval. He never gets it. So he grows up wanting to win the approval of everyone else since he couldn't get his daddy's approval. That's basically what it sounds like happened. And then, like I said, his mother, Mae, was known for being independent, which might have inspired Elon's drive for self-sufficiency and his subscription to individualism. But he didn't get a lot of emotional support, it sounds like. So we've heard about, how he's good at compartmentalizing and that makes him a good leader because he's emotionally detached from his work. I actually, as someone in leadership, think it is the opposite. But other than mommy and daddy issues, clear mommy and daddy issues, he also had struggles at school. So Elon was the youngest and the smallest in his class, the runt of the litter, if you will. And like many of us, he turned to books and computers as an escape. That is relatable, I will say. But it's also the incel pipeline. It can go too far. It's all about balance, people. So he was bullied. And this is where it gets a little confusing because some reports, say that Musk was bullied and beaten so severely that he was hospitalized. Other reports say that he was pushed down a flight of stairs and hospitalized. His brother Kimball described Musk's face as being so swollen that it was unrecognizable. So it was a really bad beating. And apparently his dad took the side of the bullies. And again, this is from everything I've gathered from interviews with Musk, of his own words, of his own volition. Okay, so this is kind of wild. So we got Elon's side of his relationship with his dad, right? And there's two sides to every story. It's important to keep in mind, however, I think both of these men are unreliable narrators. Nonetheless, this piece on Yahoo is fascinating. It originally appeared on HuffPost. So it's called Elon Musk's Dad Debunks Bullying Memories and Much More in Freewheeling Interview. So his dad went on the web series Podcast and Chill with Mac G. This was in November 2024. I was going to say 2014. My God. 2024. So I'm just going to read this straight from Yahoo because this adds a whole nother layer to Elon's childhood. So, and it's also interesting now that Elon Musk, funded Donald Trump's campaign, is working for him, slashing, waste, fraud, and abuse allegedly in the government. So during the interview with podcaster MacGyver Mukwevo, businessman and politician Elon Musk claimed that tension between him and his son began over Elon's support for President-elect Donald Trump, whom he called a, quote, good man and, quote, solid businessman. He was just brainwashed by those Democrats, the elder Musk said of his son at the time, who has turned from a Democratic donor to one of Trump's most powerful supporters in recent years. Elsewhere during the conversation, Elon Musk remembered his son as a, quote, typical boy, though one with no filter. Asked if the tech billionaire was bullied as a child, as Musk has claimed, his father remembered things a bit differently. No, that's another story that's not exactly true, Elon Musk said. According to the elder Musk, one high school era incident Elon has repeated when a classmate pushed him down a stairwell, leaving him hospitalized, actually began, and trigger warning here, suicide, actually began when Elon antagonized another boy about his father's suicide. But even police and school authorities, he recalled, told Errol that, quote, what Elon had said to this boy is too much. You can't say that. During the interview, Errol Musk also cleared up some misconceptions about his involvement with the African emerald trade. Elon Musk has repeatedly denied his father ever owned an emerald mine, but the older Musk, who did own a stake in an emerald mine in Zambia, according to Snopes, said that his son was fully aware of his father's work in the precious gem industry and once even helped him broker a deal with Tiffany & Co. Elon knows all about the emeralds, Elon Musk claimed. It's just because, you see, he wants to tell the people in America that he also had a hard time. In this conversation, Musk also addressed his affair with his former stepdaughter, discussed his family's ties to the South African apartheid regime, and shared his opinions on Elon disowning his transgender daughter, Vivian Wilson. So, an affair with his former stepdaughter. Okay. So like I said, unreliable narrators here. The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, but according to the New York Times, Elon Musk's father says that he and Elon are actually on good terms and, quote, always have been. This was as of February 21st, 2025. So they actually reunited in 2023 after SpaceX's Starship rocket launched. This comes after Elon described his father as, quote, a terrible human being. Apparently up until this, they hadn't spoken or had a relationship for 7 years. The last time they had seen each other was in 2016 for Errol's 70th birthday. Elon apparently even gifted his dad a luxury car. So, like most families, it sounds like they have a strained relationship. They can't agree on what happened during childhood. And they argue about politics. And maybe Elon accepting Donald Trump has finally brought these two men closer. And maybe that's why he now sees Trump derangement syndrome as a mental illness, as he discussed in an interview with Fox News. So not only is it now illegal to protest Teslas, according to our president, it's illegal to not spend our money on an $80,000 vehicle. But we're also mentally ill if we don't like Trump, according to these rich, powerful men who, according to each other, are neglectful, bad parents. Their words, not mine. But I can imagine that didn't help their relationship, and it didn't help Musk's self-esteem, sense of self-worth, and approval from his dad. So after this, Elon ended up leaving public school for a private academy, and apparently decades of surgeries were required to repair the physical damage. So there definitely was trauma in his childhood, right? And this is important when we talk about complex, shady motherfuckers. Every villain has an origin story. Every person has bad shit happen to them. You can empathize with trauma without excusing the grown-ass person who's causing more trauma to billions of people. Just my 2 cents for what the fuck it's worth. Okay, so then at age 17, Elon left for Canada to avoid mandatory military service during apartheid. He attended Queen's University in Canada and later transferred to the University of Pennsylvania for dual physics and economics degrees. He then attended Stanford and dropped out after 2 days to co-found Zip2, his first tech success. But that was not his first success. He actually sold a video game at age 12 called Blastar, and he sold it for $500. He later went on to found X.com, which then evolved into PayPal, which was eventually sold to eBay for $1.5 billion. We basically know the rest from there, right? He went on to invest in Tesla and other companies like SpaceX and Neuralink. Neuralink is a brain chip. Fun. And of course, he spent a whopping $44 million to buy Twitter, which, funny enough, so he put up Tesla as collateral for his loan to buy Twitter. And so as Tesla stock crashes day by day, and so if that goes under, so does X. Bye, bitch. Now, of course, this is not a comprehensive, biography of Elon Musk. If you want that, it's out there. It's been done. There are books, there are biographies, there are documentaries, there are documented interviews. Like I said, I will link all of them in the show notes. But I'm here today to talk a little shit, to try to make sense, to look at the past to make sense of the present. And really to psychoanalyze this robber baron who's doing all kinds of shady shit with our tax dollars. So let's get into psychoanalyzing. Okay, so Elon has a public perception. It goes one of two ways, right? Depends on who you're talking to. Some people see him as humanity's savior, as a tech god, as a genius. Others see him as an unchecked egotist, a robber baron, if you will, a giant titty baby who spends his time crying on Twitter and bullying people and making sure his tweets show up on everyone's timeline, even if you've blocked him. So 2 conflicting truths can exist at the same time, right? Elon can be the richest man in the world, he can be a successful entrepreneur by traditional standards, and he can be a giant titty baby internet troll. He is all of the above. He is many things. So why is he like that? Let's go back to his childhood. It's not uncommon for people who have experienced trauma to develop a need to prove their worth or to assert their dominance later in life. So Musk's drive to achieve the extraordinary could stem from a desire to never feel powerless again. His dad emotionally neglecting him and not supporting him during this traumatic time probably left Musk feeling unsupported or unworthy. And this could fuel a need to seek validation on a global scale by becoming the richest man in the world, by revolutionizing industries, and by positioning himself as humanity's savior. Right? It's a classic, like, Batman story. Kid has a traumatic childhood, grows up to have all the money in the world, and what does he do with it? He tinkers and makes toys to take us to Mars. Which, what is that all about? You know, other billionaires, not that they're great, no billionaires are great. Even Taylor Swift needs to give away her money, and she does give away some of it, but she could do more. Let's all take a note from Dolly Parton's book. Dolly Parton, the only reason she's not a billionaire is because she gives away massive amounts of money. But other billionaires are a little more focused on how do we improve life here on Earth? How do we combat climate change? How do we ensure that we have an Earth we can live on, that we have drinkable water? Whereas Musk is focused on taking us to space. He wants to colonize Mars. He wants to jump ship here and just head to Mars like that's a viable fucking option. So this obsession with solving humanity's biggest problems could be seen as a way to rewrite his narrative. So instead of being the small, powerless kid, he's now this visionary leader who can save the world. He can, but he won't. He's kind of like a wannabe Tony Stark. I think that's how he sees himself, as a figure who's admired, respected, and untouchable. But Tony Stark isn't real. He's not real. Superheroes aren't real. People who've experienced a lack of control in their early lives often seek to regain it in adulthood. So whether it's Tesla, SpaceX, or Neuralink, all of his businesses are about controlling the future and leaving an indelible mark on humanity. It's as if he's saying, I'll be so big, so important, that no one can never hurt or dismiss me again. So this is where narcissism comes into play versus leadership. He's notorious for being a cutthroat, quote-unquote, leader. He's notorious for layoffs, especially firing union workers. He and Trump bragged about that on a podcast a couple years back. Maybe it was last year, semi-recently. And I don't I make it a point not to talk about my day job on this podcast, but I am in management. And as a leader who, has been doing it for 10 years, reads about leadership, studies it, has seen different results through trial and error, I believe in investing in people first. If you take care of your people, they'll take care of your business. Whereas Elon is kind of sees his businesses as his, I was going to say as his babies, but he really doesn't seem to give a fuck about his children, especially his trans child, who also came out recently and has claimed that Elon allegedly chose the gender. But yeah, he's had 14 kids with 4 different women. Some of the women he hasn't even had a quote-unquote relationship with, a romantic relationship. One of them was his coworker at one of his companies. I believe it was Neuralink. And his most recent baby mama, Ashley St. Clair, she and his other baby mama, Grimes, were trying to get in touch with Elon recently while he was on stage with a chainsaw, just waving it around. And they were having emergencies with their children, and they could not get in touch with Elon. So they then took to Twitter/X, and instead of replying to them, he basically shadow banned them to deprioritize the tweets where they would not show up. Because this is what he does on Twitter, right? He claimed that he was buying it to protect free speech and protect the town square. But it's really so he can control the town square. He promotes Nazi garbage. He replies to Nazis all the time on X. If you block him, he will unblock himself. He prioritizes his tweets. I could go on and on about all the problems with X and all the ways he has tanked Twitter. But I won't. Like I said, I'll include the sources in the show notes. Y'all can do your own research. Don't just take my little old word for it. And speaking of his activity on Twitter/X, I can't even. I've tried to like make a list of his worst tweets, and it's so hard because there are so many. He is truly a troll. He loves to troll. Um, but he's really nasty on Twitter, and y'all should take a look at his tweets if you haven't seen them. He's currently crying right now, saying that everyone's being mean to him, even though he's never physically harmed anyone, which is false. I think I said this at the beginning of the podcast, but I'm going to repeat it again because I need people to understand that if you are cutting off funding for programs that help the vulnerable, the most vulnerable people in our country, then you are physically harming people, millions of people at a systemic level. It's kind of like the Luigi Mangione case. Murder's bad, murder's wrong. So is denying millions of people from accessing the health care they need, the necessary surgeries they need. I need people to understand that violence is not just punching someone or murdering someone. Violence can also come from actions taken by powerful people that have horrible consequences. Also, this just popped into my head, but throwback, does anyone remember when Taylor Swift came out and endorsed Kamala Harris for president in 2024, and Elon responded by threatening to impregnate her? Yeah, that happened. That's the kind of troll we're dealing with, the kind of incel we're dealing with, the kind of narcissistic abuser we are dealing with. Let's also talk about how Elon is the biggest corporate welfare queen in the world. So even though he's the richest man, he has us to thank. He recently struck a government contract deal for SpaceX where he profits $8 million a fucking day. $8 million. And yet the minimum wage has not gone up in decades. And yet this man makes $8 million a day from this one contract alone. He also has not stepped away from any of his companies since taking a huge, giant role in the White House in our government, which is completely unethical. So other than SpaceX, he also has Starlink, where this is another conflict of interest. So he was involved in the canceling of Verizon's government contract so that he can pave the way for a Starlink contract, for a Starlink government contract. And in that same vein, Ontario has canceled their Starlink contract. So I expect us to see more and more territories and countries ripping up their Starlink contract. And I'm going to read this from Forbes.com. So Musk's personal involvement with Starlink at the FAA appears to violate the prohibition on federal workers participating directly in government matters that affect them, the CLC argues, pointing out that awarding Starlink a multi-billion-dollar government contract with the FAA would, quote, have a real as opposed to speculative possibility of affecting the financial interests of Musk, Starlink, and SpaceX. Federal law prohibits any government employees, including special government employees like Musk, from participating personally and substantially in any particular matters in which the employee, their spouse, their companies, or other business partners have any, quote, financial interest, with any, quote, willful violations being punishable by up to 5 years in prison or fines of up to $50,000 per offense. Forbes also reports that Musk, quote, appears to have personally and substantially participated in the dealings around the FAA and Starlink, the CLC alleges, citing the billionaire's known role overseeing Doge, which we all know. First, Elon was in charge of Doge, and then he wasn't. Oh, he has nothing to do with it. That's to protect his ass, because this is what's actually going on. It's actually super illegal what he's been up to. But
So from Forbes, the CLC raised concerns based on public reporting regarding the FAA deal, in which the agency is reportedly working with Starlink on improvements to its air traffic control systems, with the complaint citing a Washington Post report saying the FAA was, quote, close to canceling its existing $2.4 billion contract with Verizon in favor of working with Starlink, a division of Musk's company SpaceX, as well as public comments from Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, saying Starlink would, quote, play some part in upgrades to the agency's systems. So I'm so sorry. The Verizon contract has not been canceled yet. It's just close to canceling. So yeah, there you have it. Elon Musk in a nutshell. A traumatized little boy who never formed a healthy sense of self. So he grew up, turned into a narcissist, because when you don't form a sense of self, you're constantly chasing it. And you're chasing validation from other people while also having a God complex that you cannot be wrong and that no one is as smart as you. No one gets it like you do. And it's your job to save the world. No one else can do it but you. That's narcissism, babes. That's plain and simple narcissism. And there's one person in the world who does feel bad for Elon Musk, and that's our dear president, President Trump, who hosted Elon and 5 of his Teslas at the White House, had a huge SpawnCon moment, and Trump has now claimed that it is, quote, domestic terrorism to fuck with a Tesla. He also claims that boycotting the company is, quote, illegal. And I just want to know, since when is not spending my hard-earned money illegal? It's not. Just because you say something is illegal, it doesn't make it fucking illegal. Okay, let's all take a deep breath and cleanse our palate of Elon Musk. Because we've talked a lot about the fucker today. I would like to remind the listeners, psychoanalyzing is fun. It's what I do. It does not excuse anyone's actions. Elon Musk is a villain, and this is his villain origin story. And it's ironic because he grew up being obsessed with superhero comics, and he always wanted to be a superhero. He always wanted to be Batman. But he's actually the Joker. Everyone's laughing at you, Elon. They might have praised you once upon a time, but like Kanye, you're ruining your own legacy. And it's sad. It's terrifying watching the richest man in the world spin out and lose his mind before our very eyes. Not that he had much of one to begin with. I know people think he's a genius. He's really good at buying companies, guys. He's really good at getting money from the government and buying more companies. He's not, however, a good person. Hate to break it to you, babes. And he's not going to save humanity. He's going to make himself money at the cost of your money. It ain't trickling down. Have you felt it trickle down? Because I don't feel it. So I'd like to close us out with one final question. Is Elon Musk truly a visionary genius? Or does his superhero complex ultimately hinder humanity? Let me know what you think. Email me at forloveandjusticepod@gmail.com. As always, let me know if I got anything wrong. And let me know what you want me to make sense of next. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
One last thing before I leave you all. So I've taken my sweet time recording this, and more just comes out by the day. So as I was recording, we talked about Elon's daughter, Vivian, who is transgender. She did an interview with Teen Vogue, and she had some interesting things to say about her father. So Elon has 14 kids, right? From 4 different women across a span of 20 years. His most recent was announced within the past month. He has yet to claim his 13th child with Ashley St. Clair. But yeah, February 28th There was a 14th child with Siobhan Zillis, a top executive at Neuralink. So Vivian is Musk's child with his ex-wife, Justine Wilson. Elon has tried to discredit Vivian by dead naming her and claiming she'd been, quote, killed by the woke mind virus in an interview with conservative influencer Jordan Peterson. And I'm reading directly from the Teen Vogue interview. It says, in that telling, excuse my dog, but in that telling, according to Wilson, she was an angry, rebellious child, blinded by radical anti-capitalist ideology and hurting her father with her rash decisions. So prior to this interview, she took to Threads, not X, to describe Musk's characterization of her as, quote, entirely fake, and she called him, quote, desperate for attention and validation and told him to touch grass. Thank you, Vivian. She then goes on to say, I'm not giving anyone that space in my mind about her dad. The only thing that gets to live free in my mind is drag queens. Period. She's now living abroad and studying different languages in school. She studied French, Spanish, and Japanese. And before all this happened, she hoped to become a translator. But with her newfound prominence, Wilson is considering other possibilities like Twitch streaming and modeling. She's funny. She says, I haven't made any money from being famous at all. I have made $0 and 0 cents. I do live in a lot of people's heads rent free, though. That's really funny. Oh, it's also her absolute dream to be on a reality show, which she says, which I know is absolutely pathetic. It's not. It's not. We love reality TV. Okay, so she's also getting into activism. She goes on to say, obviously, it's not just trans people that are affected by the current administration, and mentions marginalized groups such as undocumented immigrants and people of color. I'm really trying to do more advocacy on that front since the current administration has been kind of like a wrecking ball in that regard. So she caught up in Teen Vogue via Zoom from Tokyo, where she's now studying. Good for her. Okay, so the interview starts out with Teen Vogue asking about Vivian's coming out story and how her parents reacted. About her mom, she says she was very supportive of my transition. She is a published writer of supernatural romance fiction, which is where I get all my Vivianisms of being cringe and chronically online. When I came out to her, she was like, yeah, that figures. She kind of pieced it together. So when I came out, she pretended to be slightly surprised for 30 seconds. And then she was like, yeah, honey, okay. Teen Vogue then asks, what about your dad? And Vivian says, no, he was not as supportive as my mom. First of all, I had not talked to him in months. So I had to get fucking parental consent to get testosterone blockers and hormone replacement therapy. Teen Vogue then goes on to ask Vivian if she's on good terms with her siblings. And she says, that's a question. I will say I do not actually know how many siblings I have. If you include half siblings, that's just a fun fact. It's really good for two truths and a lie. I found out about the Siobhan Zillis thing the same time everyone else did. I had no idea before that. I found out about Grimes having a second child because a drag queen posted about it on Reddit. For a time, me and Grimes were not really in communication because I wasn't in communication with anyone in that family, which still holds true. Tatiana from RuPaul's Drag Race Season 2 and RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars 2 tweeted, not Grimes popping out another axolotl, which made the front page of the RuPaul's Drag Race subreddit, which is how I found out about it. And then there's an editor's note. Wilson says she found out about Musk's reported child with St. Clair the same way, joking, if I had a nickel for every time I found out I had a half-sibling through Reddit, I'd have 2 nickels. And then she says, are we going to get into drama? And Teen Vogue says, girl, exactly as much as you want to get into it. Vivian says, I don't keep up with that side of the family because I don't. My mom doesn't really either. She's divorced, work. So yeah, I don't really give a fuck what they do. This is not my problem, okay? I've seen X once when he was very little. So this image Musk wants to promote of him being this devoted father. You know, he brings little X everywhere with him, uses him as a human shield. You know, he talks about promoting family values and you should have as many kids as possible, and he goes to great lengths to have as many kids as possible, but it doesn't really seem like he's good at communicating with them or introducing them to each other, telling people about new children, new siblings. It's not really giving tight-knit fam. Okay, so they then go on to ask Vivian about her politics, and she gets into the Nazi salute of it all. So she says, that Nazi salute shit was insane. Honey, we're going to call a fig, and we're going to call a Nazi salute what it was. That shit was definitely a Nazi salute. The crowd is equally to blame, and I feel like people are not talking about that. The crowd should be denounced. But other than that, I don't give a fuck about him. I really don't. It's annoying that people associate me with him. I just don't have any room to care anymore. When I initially did the whole thing, when he came for me, the Jordan Peterson interview, that was the most cathartic moment of my entire life by far. I had all this pent-up energy. I had wanted to speak out for so long after being essentially defamed in a book, after being doxxed. Everything that had gone on, especially in my childhood, when that finally happened, it was the most cathartic experience I ever had. And then I was like, okay, whatever. Then Teen Vogue asks, do you ever feel scared? He's the richest man in the world. And Vivian says, he's a pathetic man-child. Why would I feel scared of him? Oh, he has so much power. Nah. I don't give a fuck. Why should I be scared of this man? Because he's rich? Oh no, I'm trembling. Ooh, shivering in my boots here. I don't give a fuck how much money anyone has. I don't. I really don't. He owns Twitter. Okay, congratulations. People thrive off of fear. I'm not giving anyone that space in my mind. The only thing that gets to live free in my mind are drag queens. Period queen. Teen Vogue then goes on to ask Vivian about Walter Isaacson's 2023 biography of Elon Musk. It says you had serious issues publicly with the biography. In it, Isaacson alternates between using your dead name and your middle name. Vivian says he had an agenda when writing this book, which was to make Elon look good or look more complex than he is. In order to do that, he needed to villainize the trans teenager and make it seem like there were two reasonable sides to the story. Isaacson did not respond to Teen Vogue's request for comment. So this does add new layers to the whole, because, you know, Elon's dad said a similar thing, that he wants to have this traumatic childhood to make him seem like a complex character, when in reality, it kind of seems like he's just a narcissistic asshole who likes to throw money around to get his way and then throws tantrums when he doesn't get his way. I don't know. That's what it sounds like to me. But what do y'all think?
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you.